It's in 7-day! For those of you on the channel, you know what that means. In 7-day, November 7th, or as us Mass Effect fans have decided to impromptu decide, in 7-day is the day to celebrate all things Mass Effect. Now, last year I did kind of miss this because I forgot. That's pretty much the long and short of it. Is I was like November 16th when I realized, oh, I missed in 7-day. But the year before that, I'd managed to hit it. And I want to try to keep it a running theme. In fact, I'm going to try to record and upload this video in like a day, so I hope it works. Today's book is Mass Effect Initiation. Or perhaps more accurately, Mass Effect Andromeda Initiation. One of the 3 novels written for the Andromeda's game story, Mass Effect Initiation was released on November 28th of 2017, and it was written by authors Mac Walters and N.K. Jemisin. Yes, that N.K. Jemisin. Not that you would really know by reading this book, but let's move on. Now, the Mass Effect Andromeda has, let's go ahead and say, a checkered history with the fans. When the game was released, it was rightfully lambasted for its terrible animation, its mediocre story, and its questionable mechanics. After all, it's home to famous lines such as,
"To whom? And your goddamn father. Sorry, my face is tired from dealing with everything."
The game has had something of a resurgence lately, especially with the rumors of Mass Effect 5 on the horizon, with many people claiming that it was unfairly treated at the time it was released, that it was only treated poorly because everyone was expecting it to be a Mass Effect game rather than its own thing. I wonder why they would think that. Anyways, they claim that the game on its own may not be perfect, but it was good and deserved to be treated much kinder than it was. And respectfully, I have to disagree with that to at least an extent. Now, I'll go on record and I'll say the game itself was definitely better than its worst detractors will make it out to be. I've played through the game twice now, and while I won't say it's terrible, the years have been kinder to it as several patches have rolled out and saved it from such things as... But I will also say that people are being a little too apologetic for it on the other end of the spectrum. Since this isn't a game review channel, I won't go into things like mechanics or the graphics, and I'll focus more on the story. Namely that I think the story is definitely something that needed real refining, and they just didn't do it. It's effectively just the first Mass Effect again, but with different Reapers, different Protheans, and different native aliens of the galaxy. That being said, I still really like to dig into the expanded universe of stuff I enjoy and I don't enjoy. After all, I do dislike the Disney trilogy, but I would probably still read Lost Stars by Claudia Gray, a book that follows the new Disney canon. I never played the Halo games, but I did still very much enjoy reading Halo Fall of Reach. And the Mass Effect books, barring one, have been pretty solid in the past. So, why not give this one a chance, right? So, how did this book hold up? Well, to start, Initiation is a prequel novel, as all 3 of the Mass Effect Andromeda books technically are, and follows one of our companions from the game, Cora Harper.
Can I just do today over again?
Shortly after she joined the Andromeda Initiative. The basic story of it is she has to deal with some classic corporate espionage that continuously spirals further and further out of control the deeper in she gets. Now, on a principle level, this book should be perfect in concept. Cora was one of the companions in the game that when compared to Liam, who I hated, or compared to Vitra, who I loved, I didn't really have strong feelings towards Cora. Like with the navigator Suvi, she was just kind of there. And I could easily forget her existence if I waited long enough between my playthroughs of the game. In fact, I say that because I did. So much between my first and second playthrough of Andromeda, I had forgotten Cora Harper was even a character. And Admittedly, that's not unique to Korra, but I do consider it notable because she's an actual companion. I know a lot of people harp on Jacob from the original trilogy, and in comparison, he is one of the most boring companions of Mass Effect 2. But I can say this, I never once forgot Jacob existed as a character. Mostly because he has some unfortunate implications once you look into his backstory, but that's another point. So a book like this should be great in core concept. It would grant her character much needed depth, something to really help me connect with her on a level I failed to do so with the game alone. And I will admit that while reading through this book, I would say it's solid. It's got a decently escalating story, but without falling into that trapping of making it a life and death scenario for large numbers of people. This helps it stand out as unique when compared to the games, where the stories cover much larger events and much higher stakes. And even a couple of the other books, such as Ascension, which ends with the Quarians and Cerberus duking it out and creating their very tense history with each other.
I don't know who you are, but Cerberus threatened the security of the migrant fleet. Don't make nice.
It also gives us a much wider view of the galaxy. Unlike Ascension or Revelation, which follows a very human-centric cast and human-centric goals, this book does take the time to look at the perspectives of the rest of the galaxy. Now, admittedly, this is mostly from the Asari perspective, because, of course, Cora Harper's backstory is that she was a powerful biotic that was trained by Asari commandos. And because this is a book that isn't limited by a game engine, we also get to see various things that we wanted. Like how the original trilogy books would introduce us to female versions of an alien race we'd only seen males of. This book actually makes it canon that Asari have different body types beyond the one model they do have in the game. I mean, who doesn't like the idea of a muscular Asari? That being said, while I do say the book is solid, that's about all I can say about it. Because, yeah, if you like Mass Effect, you might like reading this book, but is it something that I would say you should go out of your way to read? No, not really. Honestly, I wouldn't blame you if you just skipped this book, because I don't think you'll be found wanting if you didn't read it. A part of that is because I don't think the authors really ever tried to get into Cora's head. A lot of it feels very detached from her and impersonal through most of it. And apart from a few token moments here and there, namely at the beginning where we see Cora's culture shock, which is well done, and a couple scenes near the end, Cora just feels like she's a chess piece being moved back and forth by the authors. For example, at one point in the book, one of Cora's Huntress squad mates, who she was really good friends with, called Jania, I'm not even going to try to say the name, calls Cora out for her unwillingness to let herself get attached to anything. That this creates the surface that Cora might seem professional and calm, capable of looking at situations in a purely objective manner. In reality, it was just her being afraid to attach to anyone or anything emotionally, just leading her to drift through life without any purpose. And sure, I can see that as being a flaw of Cora Harper, the character, but the story itself doesn't really show us that flaw in the narrative. It's a very tell, don't show kind of flaw. When I read this book, I don't get the feeling that one of Cora's major personality flaws. I don't get the feeling that one of Cora's major personality flaws is that she's afraid to allow herself to get attached to anything, choosing to coast through life without purpose because she's afraid of gaining that purpose and being disappointed. Honestly, I would argue that she was just someone who didn't know what she wanted because she never really had much of a chance to. She never really got to sit down and just know Cora Harper. In addition, one of the major emotional twists of the books for Cora's character isn't even told from her perspective. It's told from Alec Ryder's point of view instead, thus heavily diminishing the actual impact of the moment. It doesn't feel like a gut punch, it feels like a, oh, that sucks kind of moment. In any case, I was also disappointed because this is the second Andromeda book I've read, and it still fails to answer some of the questions I have about the Andromeda initiative in the game. For example, my biggest one, for example, is how on Earth, or I guess I should say, how in the Milky Way, did the Andromeda initiative ever gain any real backing? I get that, yes, I get in the meta context, the Andromeda Initiative is a necessary component to make the games move, as Andromeda wanted to tell a story disconnected from the original games, but due to the original game's massive galaxy-altering stakes, it would be impossible to do in the same universe. However, that doesn't mean that they don't have to explain how it works. To explain why I find it so difficult to accept the Andromeda Initiative, think of it this way. We have canon information that explains that less than 1% of the Milky Way galaxy has been charted by current spacefaring species. In addition, humanity is incredibly new on the scene as a spacefaring race in the wider scheme of things. By the end of Mass Effect 3, it had only been about 30 years since humanity's first contact with aliens. That means even Shepard is canonically older than humanity's first contact. And yet, somehow, in less than 28 years into humanity's attempt to integrate into a wider galaxy, you already have widespread support for an initiative that will take people out of the Milky Way into a whole new galaxy to settle, founded by a human. Now, don't get me wrong. We do get Alec Ryder's perspective on why he joined the Andromeda Initiative, and for his character, it makes perfect sense. However, he joined the Andromeda Initiative. He didn't found it. So, his perspective on it doesn't actually matter. Even the revelation at the end of the Andromeda game doesn't work because the initiative was founded in 2176, and Shepard's first warning of the Reapers didn't occur until 2183, which is what brought galaxy-wide attention to the concept of Reapers. And the Andromeda game heavily implies this mysterious backer that funded the Andromeda Initiative co-opted the project after finding out about the Reapers. In addition, this wouldn't explain why any of the other races would be okay with it. I find it a hard pill to swallow, for example, that the Krogan would allow one of their most well-known clans, the Nakmors, a clan best known because it has a heightened resistance to the genophage, you know that genetically altered disease that causes widespread stillbirths through their people and is slowly causing the Krogan to become a extinct species? Why they would allow the clan with the best resistance to the genophage to go off on a 600-year journey to a whole another galaxy when their people are struggling as is in the Milky Way. The same with the Quarians. The book doesn't bother to try and offer explanations for either of these two races as to why there were so many Quarians and Krogan on the Andromeda Initiative. But I suppose faulting the book for what it didn't do is a bit unfair. So, and this isn't a critique of the game Andromeda itself, but rather the book. So, let's move on. I think the only other big, real complaint I have about this book is that it easily feels like it could have ended almost 70 pages sooner. After Cora rescues people from the Quiet Eddie facility, the story just kind of feels like it's just going to go. Like there was a page count they had to reach, and they're like, oh, well, I told my story, so, this happens. Cora goes through physical therapy. She connects with an old friend. She learns a bit more about this bigot group, which totally should have been Terra Firma, but instead they just made up their own for this. And I was somewhat appreciative of it at first because it was taking the time to try and take in a more emotional look at Cora Harper. But after a bit, it just starts to drag, and about the time that someone detonates a plasma bomb to sabotage the initiative, you realize that the story's like, no, I'm not done. Terrorist bomb. Yeah, that definitely was integrated well into the story I was telling. All that happens after that just feels pointless, honestly. You could have wiped it and you really wouldn't have lost much. Even its big emotional reveal, like I mentioned earlier, is from Alec Ryder's point of view, not Cora's. So even dragging the book on to tell that doesn't mean anything. Apart from that, there's mostly just a few continuity tips here and there. They reference James Vega's Fell Prime Colony thing as happening in 2184, but in the games it had to have happened in 2185 because the tragedy of James Vega making the sacrifice of the colony for the greater good was that Shepard would soon destroy the Collectors afterwards on their own, without the data that James Vega sacrificed the colony for, thus meaning that his sacrifice was completely for nothing.
The best part was, we didn't really need the intel in the end. Because you were out saving the galaxy by taking down the entire Collector homeworld.
Also, this book is responsible for the notoriously infamous Asari strippers are actually practicing martial arts. Canon fact. Yeah, look at that. They're fucking killers. Yeah, no offense, I get what they're trying to do, but, take this from my perspective, as a guy, I suppose. Isn't it more demeaning to an all-female race to imply that the most well-known martial art is literally the equivalent of an erotic dance? Also, no offense, it's just stupid. Because the guys, these people are not practicing martial arts. They clearly aren't in the games, and they're clearly just supposed to be strippers. You literally have human females in the game doing the exact same dance. So in the end, I guess just a 7 out of 10. Yeah, I mean, like I said, solid book. I wouldn't be singing its praise, and I would recommend almost any of the original trilogy books over this one, but if you had to read an Andromeda book, it's far from the worst one you could be reading. I've read Nexus Uprising already, and trust me, we'll get to it eventually, but of the two, this is easily better than that one. I think my biggest complaint is that it just doesn't feel like a Mass Effect book. It doesn't feel like it's Mass Effect. Especially at the point where Core is trapped in a Black Ops facility and is effectively fighting off cybernetic zombies. Which, described like that, does sound out of place for Mass Effect, but it's also, like, perfectly fitting, considering that's all the Reaper forces are.
Only one thing is certain. If Shepard doesn't bring help soon.
But the problem with that is that it's not the Reapers doing that, and the book tries so hard to distance itself from the Reaper plotline to the point that it's obvious that they're trying to distance themselves from the Reaper plotline. And it would have just been a little more interesting if Core was interacting with Reapers and didn't realize it, and that would have led to a nice, interesting revelation for her in the game. Because now you can watch that scene and think, oh, when you tell Core Harper, she'll be like, oh, that explains that happened to me. So, all in all, I'm like, I wouldn't toss it in the particle accelerator to the sun, but like I said, I won't be recommending this necessarily either. It's just solid. That's it. Read it if you want. I'm not going to cry if you don't. With that being said, just remember, with every book comes an adventure, and every adventure is worth having, even the bad ones. See you later, everyone.